Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we're going to take a look at Sweden's first submachine gun. Well, actually their second submachine gun. Sweden's first submachine gun was the M-37, which was a licensed copy of the Suomi M-31 submachine gun with a couple of changes made to it. The sights are different, the charging handle's a little different, the barrel is shorter, and the stock profile is a bit different. Now when this was first adopted in 1937, as I said, Sweden didn't have a military submachine gun, and so when they went looking for one, they decided that it ought to use the same cartridge as their standard service sidearm, which makes sense. Well, their sidearm at the time was the model of 1907 Colt Browning. Basically, it's a 1903 pocket automatic scaled up to the 9x20 millimeter semi-rimmed Browning long cartridge. Sweden was one of very few countries that ever actually adopted the 9x20 Browning as a military cartridge. It was a little bit of an awkward cartridge to use because it was semi-rimmed, like 32 ACP, meaning that you did have to worry about rim lock in magazines with this gun. Well, at any rate, it is what they were using in their pistols, and it's what they wanted to use in the submachine gun. So the Carl Gustaf Stad Rifle Factory designed a four-stack coffin-style magazine for this submachine gun, and it held 56 rounds because the Swedes had been issuing ammunition in 28-round boxes. Their pistols held 7 in the magazine, so that was 4 pistol magazines in a box. 2 boxes then gives you a 56-round quad-stack magazine. And in that original gun, the magazine was actually canted backwards to accommodate the semi-rimmed nature of the ammunition. So as you loaded it, it ensured that you didn't stack one rim behind the one below it, thus causing rim lock. Anyway, the gun was not bad. They had 900 of them, which isn't a lot, but you know, in the early 1930s, who really thought you'd need a whole lot of these things? Well, by 1939, Sweden realized that they did in fact need a whole lot of these things. They didn't have enough submachine guns, they weren't in a position to manufacture more of them very quickly, and so they got a little bit panicky and started buying some guns from Germany. And what they bought were 1,500 Walther HPs, that was what would become the Walther P38 in German military service, and they bought those in 9mm Parabellum, 9mm Luger, because that's what Walther was making them in. And then they also bought 1,800 Bergmann submachine guns, both the long version and the short version, and those were also in 9mm. And as a result of that, the Swedish Army kind of inadvertently adopted 9mm. When they went to get more of the Suomi submachine guns, they decided to adapt those back to 9mm as well, that's what the Finns were making, that's what pretty much everyone was buying these things in. So they made a few alterations and adopted this version of the gun as the model of 37/39. So let's take a look at what those changes actually entailed. In 9mm now, it used the same standard quad stack coffin mag, and I think you can see here why it's called that. Used the same one as the Finnish M-31 Suomis. The original 1937 guns had used a 2-position flip sight for the rear sight. That was 100 and 200 meters. When they changed it over to 9mm Parabellum, they added a third leaf for 300 meters because the cartridge was more powerful and had a longer range than the 9x20. Despite 9x19 being shorter than 9x20, the 9x19 was a substantially higher pressure round and thus had a longer effective range. Now, compared to a normal Finnish Suomi, the charging handle is slightly different in contour. It has this hook to it. So that is how you would charge the gun. The selector lever down here is the same in function to a Finnish gun. All the way in is safe, and then the middle position is semi-auto, and all the way forward is full auto. These do have the same quick detach barrel design that the Finnish ones do. So you can rotate this down, rotate and remove the barrel shroud, and then remove the barrel as well. So there's the front of the receiver. The magazine catch has this nice guard behind it so that you're less likely to inadvertently dump your magazine. And then the Swedes chose a stock profile here that brings the comb up a bit higher than the Finnish gun. This is almost high enough to give you a straight line sort of recoil. I haven't shot one of these. I would be curious to have the chance to do so, and see just how it handles with a stock that's this high on the gun. That'd be interesting to try. And removing the bolt is the same as on the Finnish guns. I'm going to go ahead and drop the bolt. I want to pull the handle back because the handle here acts as a locking plate that prevents this from rotating. Once the handle's back, we can unscrew the rear cap. There we go. Remove the recoil spring. Pull the trigger and the bolt drops out. And that is identical in form to a standard Finnish Suomi bolt. You can see, however, that has that big H for Husqvarna, because it is Husqvarna that was actually manufacturing these for the Swedes. This has a fixed firing pin because it is a typical open bolt slam fire submachine gun. And there you go, one field stripped Swedish M-37-39 Suomi submachine gun. The Swedes probably wouldn't like me calling it a Suomi because Suomi means Finland, and they're not Finland. But they went and bought a Finnish submachine gun so they can deal with it. So these, of course, are quite scarce guns to find today. It was really cool to be able to take a look at one of these, and we can see how they differ a bit from the Finnish issue Suomi. Everyone really likes the Suomi submachine guns. They have a high rate of fire, but they have large magazines, and they're just generally a well-made and quite well-regarded gun. Hopefully you enjoyed watching the video. If you do enjoy this sort of content online, please do consider taking a look at my Patreon page. It's support from folks like you at $1 a month that makes it possible for me to travel about and find these guns and bring them to you guys. Thanks for watching.